In 30 seconds, a shy 17-year-old girl would become a viral sensation. Not for her talent, not for her beauty, but for something that would shake an entire school district to its core. Have you ever been the only one who looked different in a room full of strangers? Have you ever felt the weight of eyes following your every move? Do you know what it's like when silence becomes your shield, until someone forces you to break it? This is the story of Ariel Monroe, a quiet girl from Atlanta who moved to rural Kentucky and discovered that sometimes the most powerful voice comes from the person everyone expects to stay silent. What would you do if your daughter was publicly humiliated and then punished for defending herself? Stay with me, because what happened next will challenge everything you believe about justice, family, and the price of standing up. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The halls of Cedar Ridge High School seemed ordinary enough that September morning. Students rushed between classes, lockers slammed shut, and the usual chatter filled the air. But for Ariel Monroe, every sound felt amplified. Every glance felt like a spotlight. Every whisper cut through the noise like a blade. She wasn't supposed to be here. Atlanta felt like a different planet compared to this small Kentucky town, where pickup trucks outnumbered cars and Confederate flag stickers decorated more lockers than she cared to count. Her mother's new job had brought them here, but nobody had prepared Ariel for what it would feel like to be one of only 3 black students in a school of 800. Travis Mitchell noticed her first, captain of the wrestling team, son of the town's most prominent family, and holder of opinions that his grandfather would have been proud of. He watched Ariel navigate the hallways with the kind of careful attention that made her skin crawl. She kept her head down, books clutched tight, hoping to become invisible. But invisible was the last thing Travis wanted her to be. "Hey," he called out one Tuesday afternoon, his voice carrying across the crowded hallway. "Atlanta girl." Ariel pretended not to hear. She quickened her pace toward the water fountain, her heart hammering against her ribs. Behind her, she heard footsteps, not just Travis's but his crew too, Jake Morrison and Dylan Price, 3 seniors who moved through the school like they owned it, because in many ways they did. The fountain was tucked in a corner between the gymnasium and the main office. During passing period, it was always crowded. Students clustered around, filling water bottles, catching up on gossip, sneaking glances at their phones. It should have been safe. It should have been just another ordinary moment in an ordinary day. But ordinary was about to become extraordinary. As Ariel bent over the fountain, she heard Travis's voice again, closer now. "I'm talking to you." She straightened up, water dripping from her chin, and turned around. Travis stood there with his arms crossed, flanked by his friends. A crowd was already gathering. Phones were already coming out. "What do you want?" Ariel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Travis smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "Just wanted to welcome you to our school," he said. "Make sure you understand how things work around here. What happened next would change everything. But first, let me tell you what nobody knew about quiet little Ariel Monroe. Follow along as we uncover a mystery that's been buried for decades. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. She counted exactly 47 stairs during first period. Ariel sat in the back corner of her advanced biology class, trying to focus on cellular respiration while feeling like a specimen under a microscope herself. The teacher, Mrs. Henderson, had introduced her on Monday with the kind of forced enthusiasm that made everyone uncomfortable. "Class, we have a new student joining us from Atlanta, Georgia, Ariel Monroe. Would you like to tell us a little about yourself?" The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Ariel had stood up, mumbled something about liking to read, and sat back down as quickly as possible. The whispers started immediately. "She's pretty," someone said. "Wonder why they moved here," came another voice. "Probably running from something," a third person added with a snicker. By Wednesday, the novelty had worn off, replaced by something colder. The Confederate flag stickers weren't just decoration, they were a warning. She'd seen them on lockers, car bumpers, even sewn onto backpacks. In Atlanta, these symbols existed in museums and history books. Here, they were part of daily life. Ariel learned to navigate the hallways like a ghost, timing her movements to avoid the worst crowds. She ate lunch alone, did her homework in the library, and counted the days until graduation. Only 8 more months. She could survive 8 more months. But Travis Mitchell had other plans. He first approached her in the cafeteria, sliding his lunch tray across from hers without invitation. His friends followed, creating a wall of bodies around her table. The conversations nearby grew quieter as people sensed drama brewing. "So," Travis said, unwrapping his sandwich with deliberate slowness, "you like it here?" Ariel kept her eyes on her food. "It's fine, Fine." He laughed, and his friends joined in. "Come on, you can do better than that. This is Cedar Ridge. We're friendly folks." She looked up then, meeting his eyes for the first time. There was something calculating there, something that made her stomach turn. This wasn't curiosity or even casual racism. This was something more dangerous. "I said it's fine," she repeated, standing to leave. "Sit down," Travis said, his voice dropping an octave. "I'm not done talking to you." Around them, the cafeteria had gone almost silent. Students pretended to eat while straining to hear every word. Some had their phones out, recording from a distance. This was entertainment for them. Ariel grabbed her tray and walked away. She heard Travis's voice behind her, louder now, meant for the audience. "Stuck up, just like I thought." The laughter that followed her to the trash can felt like needles in her back. Have you ever been the target of someone's cruelty? Drop a comment about your experience, and let's support each other through these difficult stories. The sound of fabric tearing echoed louder than the laughter. It was Thursday afternoon, and Ariel was just trying to get a drink of water. The hallway between 3rd and 4th period was always packed, students rushing to beat the bell, teachers standing in doorways, making sure nobody ran. It should have been safe. It should have been just another ordinary moment. But Travis had been planning this. He approached from behind while she was bent over the fountain, her back turned to the crowd. His friends spread out, blocking escape routes like they practiced this choreography. The phones came out immediately, a dozen students sensing something was about to happen. "Hey, Atlanta girl," Travis called out, his voice carrying across the noise. "I'm talking to you." Ariel straightened up, water dripping from her chin, and turned around. The crowd was already forming, a circle of faces eager for entertainment. She could feel their excitement, their hunger for drama. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear climbing up her throat. "Just wanted to welcome you properly," Travis said, stepping closer. "Make sure you understand the dress code here." Before she could react, his hands were on her dress, a simple blue cotton dress her mother had bought for school. His fingers found the shoulder seam and pulled hard and fast. The fabric gave way with a sound like a whip crack. The crowd gasped. Some laughed. Others started recording more frantically. Ariel stood frozen, her dress torn from shoulder to waist, her bra exposed to 40 pairs of eyes. The shame hit her like a physical blow, hot and suffocating. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to cover up, but the damage was done. "Oops," Travis said with mock concern. "Guess that Atlanta fashion doesn't hold up so well here." His friends were laughing now, high-fiving each other like they'd just scored a touchdown. The crowd was eating it up, phones recording every second of her humiliation. She could already see the post going live, the shares and comments piling up. "What's the matter?" Jake Morrison chimed in. "Cat got your tongue. Maybe she's gonna cry," Dylan Price added. "Y'all think she's gonna cry?" But Ariel wasn't crying. Something else was happening in her chest, something that had nothing to do with shame or fear. It was a feeling she recognized from years ago, from her grandfather's backyard in Atlanta, from hours spent learning discipline and respect, and the difference between strength and violence. Travis had no idea he'd just awakened something he couldn't control. The crowd was still laughing when Ariel's posture changed. Her shoulders squared. Her feet shifted into a stance that would have made her grandfather proud. What would you do in this situation? Let us know in the comments below. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind. Discipline is power, baby girl. But knowing when to use it, that's wisdom. Ariel Monroe had been 7 years old when her grandfather first showed her how to make a proper fist. They were in his backyard in Atlanta, under the old oak tree, where he'd built a small training area complete with punching bags and practice mats. "Violence isn't the answer," he'd said, wrapping her tiny hands with protective tape. "But sometimes it's the only language bullies understand." 10 years of training. 10 years of learning respect, self-control, and the ancient art of turning an opponent's strength against them. Her grandfather had been a Green Beret, a man who understood that real power came from discipline, not anger. The loudest person in the room is usually the weakest, he taught her. The quiet ones were the ones you need to watch out for. Every Tuesday and Thursday after school, she trained with him. Karate, jiu-jitsu, basic boxing. Not because he wanted her to fight, but because he wanted her to never have to feel helpless. Her mother had objected at first, worried about her daughter learning violence. "I'm not teaching her to hurt people," her grandfather had explained. "I'm teaching her to protect herself when the world tries to hurt her." The world was trying to hurt her now. Standing in that hallway, with torn fabric hanging from her shoulder and 40 pairs of eyes staring at her exposed skin, Ariel felt something shift inside her chest. The shame was still there, but it was being burned away by something hotter, something more focused. Travis was still laughing, playing to his audience. Look at her just standing there. "What are you going to do, Atlanta girl? Tell the principal." His friends were recording everything, their phones held high to capture her humiliation from every angle. The crowd was growing larger, drawn by the scent of drama, like sharks to blood. "Come on," Dylan Price taunted. "Say something. Do something." But Ariel had already decided what she was going to do. Her grandfather's training kicked in like muscle memory. Her breathing slowed. Her vision sharpened. The crowd, the phones, the laughter, it all faded into background noise. She took a step forward, and Travis's expression changed slightly. Something in her movement made him pause. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice calm as still water. "You wanted to see what Atlanta girls are made of, right?" 10 years of training condensed into one moment of truth. Her grandfather had always said that a fight was won or lost in the mind before the first punch was thrown. Travis had no idea he'd already lost. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against a bully? Share your story in the comments below. One movement, one strike, one viral moment that changed everything. Ariel dropped into a fighting stance so smoothly that most people didn't even realize what was happening. Her feet shifted, her weight centered, her right hand drawn back in a position her grandfather had drilled in her thousands of times. Travis saw it coming exactly 1 second too late. The karate chop connected with the side of his neck with a sound like a baseball bat hitting a watermelon. Travis's eyes rolled back, his knees buckled, and he dropped to the linoleum floor like a bag of cement. The hallway went dead silent. For a moment, nobody moved. 40 students stood frozen, phones still recording, watching Travis Mitchell, captain of the wrestling team, son of the town's most prominent family, lying unconscious on the floor next to the water fountain. Then Jake Morrison made his move. "You crazy witch," he shouted, lunging toward Ariel with his fists raised. "You can't just..." He never finished the sentence. Ariel's left foot caught him in the solar plexus, doubling him over. Before he could recover, her knee found his chin, and Jake joined Travis on the floor. Dylan Price was smarter. He backed away, hands raised, eyes wide with shock. Whoa, I'm not." "Good choice," Ariel said, her voice steady as rock. She adjusted her torn dress, covering herself as best she could, and looked around at the crowd of stunned faces. The phones kept recording as Travis hit the floor. Students were already posting to social media, the videos going live across Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat. In a matter of minutes, the footage would spread beyond Cedar Ridge High, beyond Kentucky, beyond anything any of them had imagined. "Somebody call the nurse," Ariel said, looking down at Travis's unconscious form. "He's gonna have a headache when he wakes up." The crowd finally came alive. Students started talking all at once, their voices overlapping in excitement and disbelief. Some were laughing, others looked shocked, a few seemed genuinely scared. "Did you see that? She dropped him like he was nothing. I got all on video. Wait till coach sees this." Principal Matthews appeared at the edge of the crowd, pushing through the students with the kind of authority that comes from 20 years of dealing with teenage drama. But this wasn't ordinary teenage drama. This was something else entirely. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the chatter. A dozen students started talking at once, pointing at Ariel, at Travis, at the phone still recording. The principal's face went through several expressions as he tried to piece together what had happened. That's when the twist hit that nobody saw coming. Do you think she was right to fight back? Hit the like button if you think she did what she had to do. The same system that ignored her humiliation now wanted to punish her response. Principal Matthews stood in his office, hands on his hips, staring at Ariel like she'd just committed a federal crime. She sat in the chair across from his desk, still holding the torn pieces of her dress together, waiting for him to speak. "Fighting is against school policy," he finally said. "Zero tolerance. You know that, right?" "He tore my dress," Ariel replied quietly, "in front of 40 people." "That's not what I heard," Matthews said, consulting a notepad on his desk. "According to witnesses, it was an accident. Boys being boys, you know how it is." Ariel stared at him. "An accident? Kids horse around. Sometimes things get out of hand. But violence." He shook his head. "That's where we draw the line. You've seen the videos," she said. "Everyone's posting them. You know what really happened." Matthews leaned back in his chair. "What I know is that 2 students are in the nurse's office because of you. Travis might have a concussion. That's assault, young lady." The unfairness of it hit her like a physical blow. In the space of 15 minutes, she'd gone from victim to criminal in the eyes of the school administration. Travis and his friends, meanwhile, were being treated like innocent victims of an unprovoked attack. "I want to call my mother," Ariel said. "Already done," Matthews replied. "She's on her way. We'll be recommending a 3-day suspension, pending a full investigation." 3 days? What about Travis? What about his friends? "They'll be spoken to about appropriate behavior," Matthews said dismissively. But they didn't put anyone in the hospital. The office door opened, and Ariel's mother walked in. Dr. Michelle Monroe was a small woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice, the kind of person who helped elderly neighbors with their groceries and donated to every charity that knocked on her door. She took one look at her daughter's torn dress, and something flickered across her face. "Mrs. Monroe," Principal Matthews began, "I'm afraid we have a serious situation here." "Yes," Dr. Monroe said quietly, "we certainly do." She listened as Matthews explained the school's version of events, nodding at appropriate moments, asking clarifying questions in her soft Southern accent. She seemed like exactly the kind of parent who would apologize for her daughter's behavior and promise it wouldn't happen again. But as they walked to the car, Ariel noticed something that made her stomach flutter with hope. Her mother's smile was calm, too calm. "Mom," Ariel asked as they drove away from the school. "Don't worry, baby," her mother said, pulling out her phone. "Mama's got this." The call she made would change everything. Should victims be punished for defending themselves? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Her quiet mother had been fighting injustice long before this moment. The phone call lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Ariel sat in the passenger seat, listening to her mother's voice transform from the gentle Southern accent she knew to something sharper, more professional. "This is Dr. Michelle Monroe," her mother said into the phone. "I need you to pull the Cedar Ridge case files." "Yes, all of them." Going back 15 years, Ariel's eyes widened. "Mom, what are you doing?" Her mother held up one finger, still talking. "Federal civil rights violations. Title 6, pattern of discrimination. I want everything ready by tomorrow morning." When she hung up, the car was silent except for the hum of the engine. They sat in their driveway, but neither of them moved to get out. "Mom," Ariel said slowly, "what just happened?" Dr. Monroe turned to face her daughter, and for the first time in her life, Ariel saw her mother not as the quiet woman who baked cookies for school fundraisers, but as someone else entirely. "Baby," her mother said, "there's something I never told you about my job. You work for the state education department." "That's true, but not the way you think." Her mother's voice was gentle but firm. "I'm a civil rights attorney. I investigate schools that discriminate against students based on race, gender, or disability." The words hit Ariel like a truck. "You're a lawyer?" "For the past 12 years. I've been working undercover, gathering evidence on school districts across the South." When we moved here, it wasn't just for a new job. Cedar Ridge has been on our radar for a long time. Ariel felt like the ground was shifting under her feet. You mean you knew this would happen? I knew something would happen, her mother corrected. I just didn't know it would happen to you. I didn't know my daughter would handle it so effectively. She pulled out a tablet and showed Ariel a spreadsheet filled with names, dates, and incident reports. Cedar Ridge has a problem. Black students suspended at 3 times the rate of white students. Same infractions, different punishments. Girls punished for dress code violations that boys get away with. It's been going on for years. And now we have evidence. Your incident today, that's the tip of the iceberg. But it's also the spark we needed to light a fire under this whole system. Her mother's smile was different now. Not the soft, motherly smile Ariel was used to, but something harder, more determined. The lawsuit would expose decades of buried secrets, she continued. But I need to know, are you ready for what comes next? Because once we start this fight, there's no going back. Ariel looked at her hands, still shaking from the day's events. Then she looked at her mother, seeing her clearly for the first time. What do? We show them what justice looks like. The school's own records became the evidence of their guilt. By Friday morning, Dr. Monroe had assembled a team that looked like it belonged in a courtroom, not a small-town kitchen. 3 attorneys, 2 investigators, and a data analyst sat around the Monroe family table, laptops open, documents spread across every surface. The pattern is clear, said James Bradley, the lead attorney. Disciplinary actions show consistent racial bias. White students receive warnings and detentions. Black students get suspended. Ariel watched from the doorway, amazed at how her quiet mother had transformed into the leader of this operation. Dr. Monroe moved between the team members, reviewing evidence, making notes, asking questions that cut straight to the heart of the matter. What about the dress code violations? Her mother asked. 37 incidents in the past 2 years, replied the data analyst. Black girls written up for clothing deemed inappropriate or distracting. White girls wearing identical outfits received no consequences. The investigators have been busy too. Phone calls to former students, current families, teachers who've left the district. The stories were remarkably similar. Marcus Johnson, 2019, one investigator read from his notes. Suspended for 3 days for aggressive behavior when he complained about a teacher using racial slurs. Keisha Williams, 2021, the other continued. Expelled for fighting when she was actually defending herself from sexual harassment. Travis Mitchell, Dr. Monroe said, not looking up from her tablet. 17 infractions over 4 years. 2 suspensions, both overturned by the school board. His father sits on that board. The room fell silent. Everyone understood the implications. We're not just talking about your daughter's case, Bradley said. We're talking about a systematic pattern of discrimination that's been protected by the good old boy network for decades. But the real breakthrough came when they accessed the school's internal communications. A former teacher, now retired, had kept copies of emails between administrators. The messages were damning. Look at this, the data analyst said, pulling up an email chain. Principal Matthews to the superintendent. The Monroe girl is going to be trouble. We need to make an example early. And this one, Dr. Monroe added, her voice tight with anger. From the superintendent to the school board. We can't let these people think they can come into our community and change how we do things. These people, the words hung in the air like a poison cloud. Travis wasn't the first bully to be protected, Bradley observed. And he wouldn't be the last if we don't stop this now. The team worked through the weekend, building a case that would expose not just individual incidents, but an entire system designed to keep certain students in their place. Phone calls started coming in from other families, other parents who'd been waiting for someone to stand up. The small town's secrets were about to become national headlines. The man who taught her about justice had once protected her tormentor. The discovery came on a Tuesday afternoon, buried in a stack of juvenile court records that should have been sealed. Ariel was helping her mother organize files when she saw the name that made her blood run cold. Travis Mitchell, age 14, arrested for assault and battery. The caseworker's signature at the bottom of the report belonged to her father. "Mom," Ariel said, her voice barely above a whisper. "You need to see this." Dr. Monroe looked up from her laptop, saw the expression on her daughter's face, and immediately knew something was wrong. She took the file and read it in silence, her face growing paler with each line. "Michael," she called to her husband, who was washing dishes in the kitchen. "Come here, now." Michael Monroe walked into the living room, drying his hands on a towel, took one look at his wife's face, and stopped dead in his tracks. "What is it?" "Travis Mitchell," Dr. Monroe said, holding up the file. "You remember him?" The color drained from Michael's face. He sat down heavily in his chair, suddenly looking much older than his 45 years. "That was 3 years ago," he said quietly. "He was just a kid. He beat up a black student," Ariel said, her voice shaking. "Sent him to the hospital, and you recommended community service instead of detention." The other boy dropped the charges, her father said, but his voice lacked conviction. Travis's family made restitution. It seemed like the right thing to do. The right thing. Dr. Monroe's voice was dangerously quiet. "You protected the same boy who would later assault our daughter." "I didn't know." "You didn't know because you didn't want to know." The words exploded out of Dr. Monroe like a dam bursting. "You saw a white boy from a prominent family, and you decided he deserved a second chance. What about the black boy he put in the hospital? What about that boy's family?" Ariel sat between her parents, watching her family tear apart in real time. The father who'd taught her about fairness, who'd always told her to stand up for what was right, had failed his own test when it mattered most. "I was trying to help," Michael said, his voice breaking. "The system is supposed to rehabilitate, not just punish. But it only rehabilitates certain kids, doesn't it?" Ariel asked. "The ones who look like Travis." The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, a neighbor's dog barked. Inside, 3 people who loved each other struggled with a truth that changed everything. "I'm sorry," Michael finally said. "I'm so sorry." But sorry wasn't enough. Not anymore. Some secrets cut deeper than any physical wound. And this secret would force the Monroe family to confront not just the school's injustice, but their own complicity in a system that protected some children while failing others. The small town's dirty secrets were now in national headlines. The story broke on a Wednesday morning when a reporter from CNN picked up the viral video of Ariel's fight. By noon, every major news outlet in the country was calling. By evening, Cedar Ridge High School was surrounded by satellite trucks and reporters with microphones. "I'm standing outside Cedar Ridge High School," the CNN reporter said in her camera, where a viral video has sparked a federal civil rights investigation into allegations of systematic racism in this small Kentucky town. Ariel watched from her bedroom window as reporters interviewed students, parents, and anyone else willing to talk. Some supported her, calling her brave and strong. Others painted her as a violent outsider who'd brought trouble to their peaceful community. "She's a hero," one student told a reporter. "Travis and his friends have been bullying people for years." Someone finally stood up to them. "This is all blown out of proportion," another student countered. "Boys and girls play around all the time. She didn't have to nearly kill him." The divide was clear, and it ran deeper than just the high school. The town itself was split down the middle. Churches, businesses, even families found themselves on opposite sides of what was quickly becoming a national conversation about race, justice, and the price of standing up for yourself. Not everyone wanted the truth to come out. Some people preferred the comfortable silence that had protected their secrets for decades. The threat started on Thursday. "We know where you live," came the first phone call. "You and your family better leave town before something bad happens. Troublemakers aren't welcome here," read the letter left on their car windshield. "Go back where you came from." Someone spray-painted the word traitor on their garage door. Another night, they found their mailbox knocked over and their trash scattered across the lawn. "Maybe we should leave," Michael said during one particularly tense family meeting. "This is getting dangerous." "That's exactly what they want," Dr. Monroe replied. "They want us to run so they can go back to business as usual." "But what about Ariel?" he asked. "What about her safety?" "I'm not running," Ariel said firmly. "I didn't start this fight, but I'm going to finish it." The media attention brought unexpected allies. Former students from across the country started sharing their own stories about Cedar Ridge High School. A pattern emerged of discrimination that went back decades. I was suspended for 3 days for wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, one former student told a reporter. But kids wore Confederate flag shirts every day and nobody said a word. The guidance counselor told me I should consider community college instead of applying to universities. Another shared, said I should be realistic about my options. The stories kept coming. And with each one, the case against Cedar Ridge grew stronger. Justice was finally getting her day in court, but the battle was far from over. The truth couldn't be hidden behind legal procedures anymore. The federal courthouse in Louisville was packed on the morning of the hearing. Reporters lined the hallway, cameras flashed, and protesters on both sides held signs supporting their cause. Arielle sat between her parents in the front row, trying to ignore the stares and whispers behind her. "All rise," the bailiff announced. The Honorable Judge Patricia Williams presiding. Judge Williams was a black woman in her 60s, with gray hair and eyes that seemed to see through everything. She'd been appointed to the federal bench 15 years earlier and had a reputation for fairness that both sides respected. "This is a hearing regarding the civil rights complaint filed against Cedar Ridge Independent School District," she began. "I want to make something clear from the start. This courtroom will not tolerate any disruption, any disrespect, or any attempt to turn these proceedings into a circus." The school district's lawyers sat at one table, led by an expensive suit from Louisville who'd been hired specifically for this case. They looked confident, prepared, and completely certain they could make this problem disappear. Dr. Monroe and her team sat at the other table, surrounded by boxes of evidence, tablets, and documents that told the real story of Cedar Ridge High School. "Your Honor," the district's lawyer began, "this entire case stems from a single incident blown out of proportion by social media and outside agitators. Ms. Monroe assaulted 2 students, causing serious injury. The school followed proper disciplinary procedures. Outside agitators?" Judge Williams repeated, her eyebrow raised. "Are you referring to the family that filed this complaint?" "Your Honor," the Monroe family moved to Cedar Ridge with a clear agenda. Dr. Monroe is a civil rights attorney who has made a career of manufacturing controversies where none exist. Objection. James Bradley stood up. Dr. Monroe was investigating credible complaints that preceded her daughter's enrollment by several years. Sustained, Judge Williams said, "Let's focus on the evidence, not conspiracy theories." The evidence was devastating. Email chains between administrators joking about keeping certain students in line. Disciplinary records showing clear racial bias. Testimony from former students who'd been silenced for years. "Your Honor," Dr. Monroe said when it was her turn to speak, "this case isn't about my daughter defending herself. It's about a system that has consistently failed to protect all students equally." She presented the data, the emails, the documented pattern of discrimination. The school board members shifted uncomfortably in their seats as their own words were read aloud. "The evidence shows systematic violations of Title VI," she continued. "Black students suspended at 3 times the rate of white students for identical infractions. Girls punished for dress code violations that boys commit without consequence. And when students complain, they're labeled as troublemakers." Principal Matthews took the stand and tried to defend his actions, but under cross-examination, his story fell apart. The emails, the records, the testimony of former teachers all contradicted his version of events. The truth was finally having its day in court. Victory came with a price none of them expected. The Cedar Ridge School Board met on a Tuesday night in November, and by Wednesday morning, 3 people had resigned. Principal Matthews was the first to go, followed by the superintendent and the head of student affairs. The video evidence had been too damaging, the legal pressure too intense. But winning in court didn't mean winning in the community. Troublemaker family. Someone spray painted on their mailbox. Go back to Atlanta appeared on their car windshield. The local grocery store suddenly became a maze of cold stares and whispered conversations that stopped when the Monroes walked by. Dr. Michelle Monroe handled it with the same quiet strength she'd shown in the courtroom. She organized community meetings, reached out to local churches, and slowly began building bridges. But Ariel could see the toll it was taking on her mother's face. "Maybe we should just leave," Ariel said one evening, watching her mother scrub graffiti off their front door. "Running away doesn't solve anything, baby," her mother replied. "We've got roots here now, good ones and bad ones." The school changes were dramatic. New policies, diversity training, a zero-tolerance policy for harassment that actually meant something. Confederate flag displays were banned, and a new student council was formed with equal representation. But change is never without casualties. Some teachers left, claiming the new policies were too strict. A few families pulled their kids out, enrolling them in private schools or homeschooling. The local newspaper ran editorials about outside agitators and political correctness gone too far. Travis Mitchell never returned to Cedar Ridge High. His family moved him to a military academy in Tennessee, claiming he needed structure and discipline. Jake Morrison and Dylan Price stayed, but they avoided Ariel like she carried a contagious disease. The most unexpected consequence came from an unlikely source. Coach Williams, the wrestling coach who'd been Travis's biggest supporter, approached Ariel after school one day in December. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "I knew those boys were problems. I should have stopped it before it got this far." "Why didn't you?" Ariel asked. "Because I was a coward," he admitted. "And cowards don't deserve forgiveness." But forgiveness, Ariel was learning, wasn't always about what people deserved. The question remained, what would she do with a platform she'd never asked for? Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant moving forward. The conversation with her father happened on a snowy Saturday in January. They sat in the living room, the fireplace crackling, while her mother made hot chocolate in the kitchen. The family secret had been out for 2 months now, and they'd all been dancing around it like a landmine. "I need you to understand something," her father said, his voice heavy with years of regret. "When I worked in juvenile corrections, I saw kids like Travis every day. Angry, confused, raised on hate, but still young enough to change. So you protected him," Ariel said, not accusingly, just stating a fact. "I try to help him," he corrected. "There's a difference. Is there?" She looked at her father, this man who'd taught her about justice and fairness, who'd driven her to martial arts practice and cheered at her tournaments. "He hurt people, Dad. He hurt me. And I failed," he said simply. "I failed him by not holding him accountable. I failed you by not preparing you for a world that would test everything I taught you." The silence stretched between them, filled with the weight of complicated truths. "I'm proud of you," he finally said. "What you did took courage I'm not sure I would have had at your age." "You taught me that courage," Ariel replied. "You and Grandpa. Even when you made mistakes, you taught me to stand up for what's right." The healing wasn't instant. Trust, once broken, takes time to rebuild. But families, real families, do the work. Meanwhile, Ariel's story continued to ripple outward. Letters arrived from students across the country, sharing their own experiences with bullying and discrimination. A documentary filmmaker reached out, wanting to tell her story. College recruiters called, offering scholarships. The shy girl who'd once counted stairs in biology class was now fielding interview requests from national news networks. "It's overwhelming," she told her mother one evening. "Power usually is," her mother replied. "The question is what you're going to do with it." That question would define everything that came next. An opportunity for greater impact was about to present itself in a way none of them expected. One moment of courage had created a movement. By spring, the Ariel effect had spread to schools across Kentucky and beyond. Students were organizing anti-bullying campaigns, demanding policy changes, and recording their own stories of standing up to harassment. The hashtag #SilentStormRising had gone viral, with thousands of young people sharing their experiences. But the real legacy wasn't in the social media posts or the news coverage. It was in the small, everyday changes happening in hallways and classrooms across America. Cedar Ridge High had become a different place. The new principal, Dr. Janet Williams, was a black woman from Louisville who'd made it clear that hate would not be tolerated. Student-led diversity clubs met weekly. Peer mediation programs help resolve conflicts before they escalated. Most importantly, the culture of silence had been broken. Students actually report harassment now. Dr. Williams told Ariel during a meeting in March. They're not afraid to speak up because they know they'll be heard. Ariel had found her voice too. What started as necessity had become passion. She spoke at school assemblies, youth conferences, and community events. Her message was simple. Your voice matters, your story matters, and silence isn't protection. It's just another form of prison. The quiet girl's voice now echoed across the nation. College acceptance letters poured in. Harvard, Yale, Stanford, all offering full scholarships. But Ariel had already made her choice. She'd accepted a spot at Howard University's law program, following her mother's path but making it her own. I won't be the lawyer kids like me can call when the system fails them, she explained to a reporter from the Washington Post. The interview ran on the front page of the Sunday edition, with a photo of Ariel standing in the very hallway where her life had changed. The water fountain was still there, but now it was surrounded by posters about respect, diversity, and the power of speaking up. Travis Mitchell's name was never mentioned in the article. He'd become a footnote in a story that was much bigger than any one person's cruelty. The ultimate test of her growth was still coming. It would arrive in the form of an unexpected phone call. Sometimes the most powerful revolution starts with one person saying enough. The phone call came on a Tuesday in April, just as Ariel was finishing her homework. The voice on the other end was familiar, though she hadn't heard in months. "This is Travis," he said, his voice different somehow, quieter, less certain. Travis Mitchell. Ariel's first instinct was to hang up. Her second was to listen. "I know you don't owe me anything," he continued. "I know I have no right to call you, but I need to say something." She waited, her heart pounding. "I'm sorry," he said, and the words came out like they'd been stuck in his throat for months. "I'm sorry for what I did to you. I'm sorry for who I was. I'm sorry it took losing everything for me to understand how wrong I was." "Why are you calling me?" Ariel asked. "Because I'm in therapy now," Travis said. "Real therapy, not just anger management. And my therapist says I need to make amends, but more than that, I need to understand the damage I caused." "You humiliated me in front of 40 people," Ariel said quietly. "You made me feel like I was nothing." "I know," he said, "and I can't take that back. But I can try to make sure it never happens again." Travis told her about his new school, about the diversity training he'd gone through, about the community service he was doing at a local homeless shelter. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He was asking for a chance to be part of the solution. "I want to speak at assemblies," he said. "Tell my side of the story. Show kids what hate looks like from the inside and why it's poison." The request surprised her. The old Ariel might have said no immediately, but the new Ariel, the one who'd found her voice and her power, understood something different. "Healing isn't just about victims," she said finally. "It's about everyone." The conversation lasted an hour. By the end, they weren't friends, they might never be friends, but they were something else. Two people who'd learned that courage comes in many forms. Your voice matters, use it. The hallways that once echoed with cruelty now rang with acceptance. Graduation day arrived with the kind of perfect May weather that makes you believe in new beginnings. Ariel stood in the same hallway where her life had changed, but everything was different now. The water fountain was still there, but it was surrounded by a mural painted by the art class. Hands of different colors reaching toward each other, forming a bridge. "Strange being back here?" her mother asked, joining her in the hallway. "Not strange," Ariel replied. "Just different." The Confederate flag stickers were gone, replaced by posters about college opportunities and career fairs. The Diversity Club had their own bulletin board, covered with photos from cultural events and community service projects. The peer mediation program had a dedicated office, staffed by students trained in conflict resolution. "You did this," her mother said softly. "We did this," Ariel corrected. "All of us." The graduation ceremony was held in the gymnasium, the same space where she'd once eaten lunch alone. Now she sat with her class, valedictorian sash across her gown, looking out at a crowd that included her parents, her grandfather, who'd flown in from Atlanta, and dozens of students whose lives have been changed by her courage. Principal Dr. Williams introduced her as a young woman who reminded us all that sometimes the quietest voices carry the most powerful messages. Ariel's speech was brief but impactful. She talked about the importance of standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. She talked about the power of community and how change happens one conversation at a time. Every ending is someone else's beginning, she concluded. The question isn't whether you'll face challenges, it's how you'll respond when you do. The applause was thunderous, but what moved her most was seeing Coach Williams in the audience, wiping tears from his eyes. After the ceremony, as families gathered for photos and celebrations, Ariel found herself back at the water fountain one last time. A group of underclassmen had gathered there, talking and laughing without fear. One of them, a sophomore named Maya, approached her. "Thank you," Maya said simply, "for showing us we don't have to be silent." That's when Ariel knew the real work was just beginning.